anything seems tricky, if something doesn't sit right, if you want to share or learn some more together, please reach out to me anytime. I admit wholeheartedly that I am still learning every single day. And if you can share any additional learning with me, I will cherish that gift. I'll leave my contact information and a whole bunch of resources at the end. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And now we'll jump into the learning together. So of course, I want to start with a territory acknowledgement because it's always respectful to do that. I am calling from the traditional Lekwungen lands, so the unceded traditional territory of Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. Lekwungen means place to smoke herring and was traditionally made of 7 major family groups and was occupied by 14 different villages all around what is now known as Victoria, BC. And I acknowledge with gratitude, love, and respect the traditional keepers of these lands who for millennia have passed on their culture, history, traditions from one generation to the next and continue to share their wisdom and guidance as protectors and stewards and custodians of the land today. I like to participate with in territory acknowledgements as a reminder of my personal commitment as well. Every time I speak one, I am speaking to my commitment to the learning of the history, the language, the protocols here on this land, and to continue to honor that commitment to the relationships that I have with the keepers of these lands and hold myself accountable to maintaining a reciprocal relationship with the communities that I serve from. Now I'm going to introduce myself in Anishinaabe because I've started a language class with my family at the Victoria Friendship Center. So Ayasquachel means good day in the Lekwungen language, but Buzu, Mino Gijigad, Robyn Ward, Indigenous, Treaty 1 territory in the Anjaba, Lekwungen Aki in the Bisho, in Doda Makwa Doda. So good day, my friends, elders, family, leaders, young people, two-spirit, and non-binary people. My name is Robyn Ward. My pronouns are she, her. I am a cisgender mother, wife, sister, auntie, cousin. I grew up on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, on the ancestral homelands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, Dene peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I currently live and work and love from Lekwungen-speaking people's lands. I'm a 3rd generation English, Irish, German, French, and Ukrainian settler. And 21 marvelous years ago, I married into the Bear Clan and became part of an Anishinaabe family. I'm the mother of 2 Indigenous boys that are 14 and 18. And I just want to thank you so much for showing up today and participating in this conversation about allyship. I really appreciate you being here and showing up for this conversation. I want to start a little bit with acknowledging my privilege because I think that's one of the things that we do in the allyship space. So I am white, I'm female, I'm cisgender, my pronouns are she, her, I'm a white settler, I'm light-skinned, I have European heritage, I'm a Canadian citizen, I speak the official dominant English language, I'm in my middle years, I grew up in poverty with a single mom, and I now live in privilege in financial middle-class professional. As a financial middle-class professional, I have a great understanding of childhood trauma, abuse, mental, physical, emotional suffering. I've spent 20 years in the space of seeking healing knowledge and skills. I'm university educated degree holder. I have a bachelor degree in psychology with a minor in sociology. I have a graduate certificate in executive coaching. I'm a homeowner. And I'm a bisexual in a heterosexual married relationship, enjoying my happily ever after in safety and comfort. And I am continually trying to learn and unlearn colonial ways of being and leverage my power and privilege as a committed disruptor towards human rights and social injustice. So we're going to talk about a few things today. The agenda is that we'll have an introduction, then we're going to talk about trauma-informed approaches. Then we'll talk a little bit about self-care knowledge and tools, a growth mindset. I'll introduce Brene Brown's anatomy of trust and then apply that framework to how we build trust within Indigenous communities. and then hopefully close with some time for some questions. I'll try not to go too fast, but I'd love to have some time at the end. And even perhaps ending with some commitments and asking the audience if you want to perhaps share in the chat some commitments that you want to make to strengthen your personal journey towards becoming a stronger ally within Canada. Reconciliation is a movement in much the same way feminism is. It's individual, it's national, it's political, it's personal. It starts with an individual commitment. The Honorable Murray Sinclair, former Chief Commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, says, reconciliation is not a spectator sport. Every person in Canada, every citizen, every immigrant, every refugee, every visitor is responsible for reconciliation. And reconciliation is not something that the government can legislate into reality. And it's not something Indigenous peoples can force on the rest of Canada. So let's begin the conversation of where to start our reconciliation journey and how to become active players in the reconciliation efforts. So trauma-informed. This is a slide and a shout out to the amazing Len Pierre. He is Coast Salish from Katsi First Nation. He's an educator, consultant, TED Talk speaker, social activist, and traditional knowledge keeper. And I was recently in one of his marvelous workshops where he talked about trauma-informed tools for your tool belt. And I'll share a link to his website and his workshop presentations at the end. So content warnings. We're going to talk about some hard topics here. Please take good care of yourself, prioritize your health and sense of well-being. I'm not going to be talking about specific events around trauma, but trauma is part of the colonial experience and it surrounds us. We're swimming in it daily, and some of the privileged population are not always able to see and be aware of the poison in the water. And it's an ally's job to be able to see the invisible and make this visible to others. Asking permission. So by showing up today, you're consenting to participating in this conversation. You have the freedom to step away at any moment in time if you need to. If you're watching, you can watch the record, or if you're watching the recording, you can click away and close the tab because we're recording this for later as well. And know that you have choice to engage in this work right now, or you can come back to it when you feel ready. Offering choices. This session's being recorded, so you can come back anytime. Honoring the choice, you can turn off video, you can stand for the session, lay down, stretch, do yoga, cuddle a pet. You have so many choices in how you want to approach this work and your participation in the learning today. I'm going to be changing the language to resilience. It takes a lot of grit to be an active ally, and we'll talk about this and go through this as we work through the workshop together. Recognizing trauma responses. This is in a few more slides coming up, but it's important to recognize trauma responses and then tend to them if something resurfaces for you. And grounding exercises. I'll offer a few of these to keep in your back pocket for any time that you need. My favorites are always smudging, being near water, and family hugs. Another piece of a trauma-informed approach is trauma-informed communication strategies. So trauma-informed communication strategies is just setting the intention and being very transparent. My intention is to proceed gently. I want to try to have a trauma-informed practice in this presentation. Part of a trauma-informed strategy is having, for example, the agenda that I shared and letting you know what's ahead, because we want to avoid any surprises. I'm going to try to cultivate safe spaces throughout and guide you through this knowledge as gently as I can. However, the main theme of this work is building capacity for discomfort. So having tools for health and wellness that support your grit in this work is what I'm hoping you'll leave with at the end, and giving us language to communicate what we already know and feel in our bodies. So self-care. Warming things up by talking about self-care, allyship, reconciliation. These can be tricky topics. It's going to bring up a lot of emotions. We want to encourage everyone to stay deeply connected to how you're feeling and take excellent care of yourselves. If things are coming up for you, if you need to leave, grab a tea, go for a walk, call a friend, whatever your heart is needing, please take really good care of yourself. I'm not perfect and no one is. And although we have I put a lot of heart into delivering this information in a good way. I can't guarantee that it's going to land well with everyone. It's impossible to create a space that can anticipate for everyone in the circle. So even a story about going and getting an ice cream can trigger someone, right? Because we don't know each other's histories, we don't know each other's experiences. So if something resurfaces for you, please take good care of yourself first and know that I fully support that. I'm going to walk through trauma responses and give you a few self-care tools as well to support that very important work of taking really good care of yourselves through this. So calm in the body, what does that look like? It is your eyes are focused in your vision, your mouth can salivate, your hands are steady, your muscles are relaxed, your stomach is in active digestion, your liver increases the rate of glycogen to glucose, your brain has executive functioning active and you are thinking clearly, your ears have auditory inclusion, your lungs are breathing slowly, your heart rate is relaxed, your sweat glands are working. That's what the calm looks like in the body. Now, what does stress look like in the body? Stress feels very different. We notice eyes go into tunnel vision or blurred vision. Hands can be really shaky. Muscles are tense. Stomach, this slows digestion. The liver converts glycogen to glucose. The brain signals adrenal glands. The ear has auditory exclusion. You can't hear anything. The lungs start breathing faster, the heart accelerates, and the adrenal glands are producing hormones like adrenaline, right? We feel that in our bodies. So trauma responses, the 4 Fs are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. These are responses to unexpected stress, usually around boundaries not being respected. So the fight trauma response involves anger, rage, bullying, intimidation. When we experience a traumatic event, our bodies may respond by becoming angry or aggressive as a way to protect ourselves. We may feel the strong urge to fight back or defend ourselves from a perceived threat. This can sound like argumentativeness, defensiveness, mocking, gossip, trash talking. Another trauma response is flight. So the flight response is manifests as like panic, worry, rumination, perfectionism. This response is characterized by a need to escape a perceived threat. So you might be hypervigilant, constantly on edge, always looking for a way out of the situation. We also ruminate on a traumatic event, obsessively thinking about what happened and what could have been done differently. This looks like avoidance, ghosting, running away from stress. The next one is the freeze trauma response. So this response is characterized by disassociation, feeling numb, feeling stuck. When we experience trauma, our bodies may shut down as a way to protect ourselves. So we may feel disconnected from our emotions, and our bodies may feel numb and unable to move or take action. This is a feeling of paralysis and not feeling like you can do anything or make any choices in the moment. And the last one is the fawn trauma response. So this is identity confusion, having no boundaries, codependency, being a people pleaser. This response involves a need to appease or the perceived threat. So often at the expense of our own needs and well-being, we may feel confused about our identity or our boundaries. Maybe we want to become overly dependent on others for validation or approval. And this looks like walking on eggshells and trying to anticipate any potential stress by being a peacekeeper. And it's not like you're one of these all of the time. You can bounce around. So there are situations when I, for example, as a mom, if I feel like my children's boundaries are crossed, I am a fighter. I am a mama bear instantly. I cannot help myself be a mama bear. For myself, if I feel like my boundaries are crossed, oftentimes I will go to flight, freeze, or fawn, typically starting with a fawn, leaning into a freeze, and then probably flighting if it doesn't improve the situation. So it's just good to know how these feel in your body and really take care of them. So Tara Brach has this concept of RAIN. If you notice stress in the body, this is a way to kind of approach it. So recognize, acknowledge, investigate, and nurture. So recognize. How do you feel? What's going on for you? Have you felt this feeling before? Acknowledge, observe and allow, name the feelings. What is going on in your body? How does it take shape? Does it have a color? You know, what does it feel like? What's the sensation? And Brene Brown even recommends that you, by acknowledging it, name it. So there's a great story she tells where she sent an email that she didn't need to send. So someone sent her some sort of hate via email. And she was like, I'll give it back to you, and wrote like a very angry response, and then accidentally clicked the send button and just repeated the word pain over and over again, because she just felt so much shame around letting that go into the world. She didn't ever mean to press that send button. So just naming it, pain. Sometimes when we're in pain, just naming it gives it power, or the emotions that we're feeling, right? Sadness, anger, give it a name, and then investigate. When did you first have this feeling? What assumptions might be underlying the feeling? Are the beliefs true? What's going on? Give yourself a little time. And this can be also, Brene Brown recommends, she calls it a stormy first draft. Investigate can just be writing unfiltered, speaking unfiltered to a chair as if someone were sitting in that chair and you were talking to that person, calling someone and actually talking with someone. Investigate, but give it space, give it time, honor it. And then nurture. How do we respond with love to this, right? Not pushing it down, not ignoring it, not hoping it goes away, but nurturing it. What is it telling you? It's a very important alarm bell, right? And so looking into what does it mean and what's going on for you? What's the most loving way you can take care of yourself through this response, right? So I just recently read Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. And he talked about how we're biopsychosocial beings. And I love this. I love this concept and idea. We're biopsychosocial beings. And having a biopsychosocial approach to systematically consider our biology, our psychology, and the social factors and how their complex interactions affect our health and wellness. So the biological systems are like senses, genes, digestion, circulation. Psychology systems, memories, experiences, hormones, emotions, coping methods. Social systems are like socioeconomical, socio-environmental, cultural factors, such as work issues, family circumstances, benefits, economics, privileges, disparities. These are all social factors. So if we know this about ourselves, then we can make choices to influence our biopsychosocial wellness. So we'll start with biology, and this is where the pen and the piece of paper come in handy. So I'm going to encourage you, if you're willing to humor me for a moment, to take a piece of paper and a pen and just trace your hand on that pen, with that pen and piece of paper. Just trace your 5 fingers. And we're going to do a self-resourcing with our 5 senses. So once you've drawn your hand on the piece of paper, I want you to write your 5 senses in each finger. So touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing. I'll give you a minute. And then write your favorite item with each of those senses. So what is your favorite fabric? What's your favorite thing to feel in your hands? What's your favorite flavor to put in your mouth and just like taste and savor? What's your favorite smell that you just can't get enough of? What's your favorite thing to look at? And what's your favorite thing to hear? And now you have some physical resources to support your well-being when you need it. And I'll give you my examples. So my touch is moccasins. I love having moccasins on my feet. They feel warm and cozy. I love the taste of chocolate, although I'm trying to be really healthy right now. So typically that means a chocolate protein smoothie, so I can pretend like what I'm doing is healthy. It mostly is. My favorite site is the ocean. Elaine Alec talks a lot about water being healing, being near water as being very healing in practice. And so I love being near the ocean. And my favorite sound is just listening to my boys tell stories about their day, or my husband decompress at the end of the day and tell me about what's going on in his world, and just listening to their voices. So when I feel low, I lean on these things to build me back up. So psychology resources So we're talking about biology, and we're now going to shift to psychology resources. Can be breathing exercises, talking to a counselor, calling a crisis line, exercise, meeting with a doctor about mental health. And social resources can be calling friends and family for support, hosting an event, or traveling home. So psychology. So using the knowledge of psychology, let's talk about everyone's sympathetic nervous system and cue some parasympathetic activity. So I'm going to propose we start with some box breathing. So we do a breath count of four times. If you're not comfortable with breathing exercises, because sometimes this can be challenging for people, I encourage you to just think about your favorite body of water as we do this work. What does that body of water look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? And visit that water in your mind and kind of tune me out. So why we start with this is that in order to have optimal learning experience, you have to have your brain outside of a state of trauma or stress. And I really want you to get value from this workshop and connect to the learning. So I want you to be in a really good place. So box breathing is a practice that's taught to US Navy SEALs, and it combines the practice of optimal breathing with parasympathetic activation, concentration, and mindfulness training. So you start by sitting with your spine as straight as possible. So you're going to inhale to a count of 4, hold to a count of 4, exhale to a count of 4, hold to a count of 4. We're going to do that 4 times. You can draw a box, and you can choose to draw the box or not draw the box. I'll draw the box today, but sometimes I'll be driving in traffic and my kids will be in the backseat and they'll see me like box breathing because someone just like almost cut me off or something. Like, Mom, are you breathing? I'm like, yes, I'm doing the tools. So these are good and they work. I mean, they have to work, right? Folks that are using them successfully are going to very stressful situations. So it's a tool. It's not the only tool. And that's why I'm giving you a whole bunch to choose from. So in 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, out 1, 2, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, in 3, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, out 2, hold 3, 4, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, hold 4, in, last time 2, 3, hold out 2, 3, 4. Okay, and hopefully you feel that immediately in your body. And stress is a spectrum, right? It's like maybe on a scale of 1 to 10 is like the worst stress you've ever felt, and 0 is you're sleeping. And you can be anywhere on that spectrum. And so using these tools that may not get you back down to a 0, but they may take it down just a little bit and make it more manageable for you to access that executive functioning and be able to problem solve, learn, store memories, all the important things that you need to be doing. Other breathing techniques that work really well that I highly recommend but don't have time for are the Hoffman breathing exercise, which is 30 really long inhales and really long exhales. So it's all the way in and all the way out 30 times. This is phenomenal. I wish we had time for it, but we don't. Another one is you take a deep breath in all the way, and then you take one last sip and then breathe out. So it's like a kind of thing. And that helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Social. Okay, so while you still have that piece of paper and pen handy, we're going to talk about the sociology of our interconnectedness. So when you see someone that you love who is sad or stressed, you feel that, you take that on. We are connected to the people around us. So let's create your inner advisory circle. So you're going to take a moment to write down 4 names who matter most to you. These are the ones that you call when you hear really great news. They're the ones you call when something goes wrong and you need something. They're the ones you call when you need advice. This is your personal advisory circle. They're there for you whenever you need them. And Dr. Brene Brown recommends that you keep these names close to you. So she keeps hers in her wallet. You can keep them on your phone, just a place that's easy to access and remember. So you are holding this close to you, and you know that these people are here for you when you need them. And when you need to lean on them, you know who to call. So the next thing we'll talk about, just before we get into the braving acronym, the braving anatomy, is having a growth mindset. So as we begin to talk about allyship, I'm going to ask you all to check in, make sure that you have your growth mindset activated. So a growth mindset sees mistakes as incredible learning opportunities, and a growth mindset seeks challenges to support continued learning and growth. A growth mindset sees human potential as limitless. A growth mindset is inspired by others. Conversely, a fixed mindset, sees failures as stoplights. It wants to label things good, bad, right, wrong. Fixed mindsets seek comfort in unchanging, consistent, predetermined. Therefore, when challenged or frustrated, the fixed mindset, it will concede. I give up, right? Admit defeat, conclude, I'm just not good enough, right? So oftentimes when we talk about allyship, a fixed mindset might not have seen the ways in which privilege affects or has affected our lives. A fixed mindset might say, I never experienced that, so it doesn't exist. Or I've had challenges in my life too, right? Defensiveness. A growth mindset knows that we've all had challenges, however, is also open to understanding that for some people, their challenges aren't amplified by the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, their gender, their ancestry. And Dr. Angela Duckworth talks about grit or resiliency. I love this model. How do we have grit when it comes to allyship? So a combination of passion and perseverance for a singularly important goal is the hallmark of high achievers in every domain. And she's found scientific evidence that grit can grow, the growth mindset, right? Every mistake is an opportunity to learn. So sometimes things are hard and we can do hard things, right? And it takes bravery to do something courageous and new. I saw a TikTok recently that said, plan for 20% failure throughout the year. That way, when you make a mistake, you just put it in the 20% pile, right? You're like, there you go. That's just part of my 20%. It's totally fine. I was expecting that because I'm human, right? So part of grit is interest. Are you interested in what you're doing? Human beings can be motivated by many things. But the most enduring of our motives are tied to our interests and our values. So how do you express your values? How do you acknowledge your values? How do you celebrate your values? How does being an ally align with your values, right? Practice. Effort times talent equals skill. Skill times effort equals achievement. So part of practice and honing your craft in being a good ally is being open to feedback from those that came before you and learning from others in the role, right? What are other allies doing? How can other Indigenous voices guide the ally work? And purpose is the desire to aid in the well-being of others. It's likely to sustain our interests and make us so much grittier. So in our best state, we authentically care for one another. You see this a lot in children, right? So how does allyship connect you to a sense of purpose? And I know I'm actively trying to make the world a better place for my boys and my unborn grandbabies, because I plan to be the best grandmom in the whole world once those are born. Not that I'm in any rush. I'm not in any rush, but we have that as a family, that 7 generations thinking, right? So I am required as part of our family practice to be thinking 7 generations ahead and working towards a better future. And hope. Grit depends on a different kind of hope. It rests on the expectation that our efforts can improve the future, that we can affect change. We have social impact abilities. So we need to hope and believe that a better future is possible. And I just love this quote, so I'm going to share it. So when introducing the TRC report, Honorable Murray Sinclair, former Chief Commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he said, "We have described for you a mountain. We have shown you the path to the top, and we call upon you to do the climbing." So confronting the issues identified in the TRC report. Oh, my audio is occasionally cutting out. Sorry. I hope it doesn't cut out anymore. Thank you for telling me. Please, maybe let me, oh, you know what? I have a fan going, so I'm going to turn that off. And hopefully that will fix it, and that's better. Or
maybe I can see Sarah. So can you give me a thumbs up if can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. Okay. Great. Yeah, so we've described for you a mountain. It's up to you to climb. So the TRC provides a crucial opportunity to begin the difficult but necessary journey towards reconciliation. So what can that look like? Now we get into the really good stuff that we're all ready to learn, and our brains are ready and our bodies are ready. So how do we brave that mountain? Boundaries. So braving is the acronym boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And this is how we build trust. So boundaries, setting boundaries and making clear what's okay and what's not okay and why. I'm clear about your boundaries and you hold them and respect them, and you're clear about my boundaries and you respect them. So another way to talk about boundaries is preferences. That feels a little lighter. Is my preference not to have the heat turned up to today or whatever, right? But it could just be a boundary. Don't touch the thermostat. And it's okay to have any preferences you like. Gabor Mate shared that all anger is a response to a boundary being disrupted. All anger. Anytime you're angry, there's a boundary disruption that's going on there. So there's a difference between healthy anger and trauma anger. Trauma anger is a beast trapped in the basement. I love that description. Healthy anger might be, hey, you stepped on my foot, get off my foot. Whereas trauma anger is a response to all the boundaries or all the trauma you've collectively felt. It's an outrage, it's a monster, it's channeled towards the person that stepped on your foot, but it's all your stuff, right? Coming out at once. Reliability, you do what you say you're gonna do, not once, but every time. So I do what I say I'm going to do, not once, but every time. At work, this means staying aware of your competencies and limitations so you don't overpromise or are not able to deliver on commitments and balance competing priorities and that kind of thing. Accountability is owning your mistakes and apologizing. We teach our kids this all the time, right? If you do something wrong, you make amends. When you make a mistake, you own it, apologize for it, recognize it. And I even like the restitution model. How do we make things right when we made a mistake? So it's not only apologizing, but it's like, how do we restore that relationship? The vault, you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. I need to know that my confidences are kept and that you're not sharing with me any information about other people that should be confidential. Because if you break trust with other people, I'm learning that you are not a trustworthy person, right? So what I share with you, you will hold in confidence. What you share with me, I will hold in confidence in our relationship. And I need to see that you acknowledge and respect other people's secrets and confidences as well. Integrity, I cannot trust you if you do not act from a place of integrity, and you encourage me to do the same. And integrity is choosing courage over comfort. How big is that? Choosing courage over comfort, being courageous. As allies, I don't know how many times I've had to choose courage over comfort. It's like using your voice, even if your voice shakes, right? Like, I'm not ready for this, but I know this needs to be talked about and I need to confront what's going on right now. Choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy, and practicing your values, not just professing them, right? What do your values look like? What does love look like? What does respect look like? What does wisdom look like? All the things that are important to you in practice. Non-judgment. I can ask for what I need and you can ask for what you need, and we can talk about how we feel without judgment. And I can fall apart and ask for help and be in struggle without being judged by you. And you can fall apart, be in struggle, and ask for help and not be judged by me. The help is reciprocal. This has been one of really hard ones for me, not judgmental. I always had a hard time asking for help because it feels like I'm admitting I'm not a superhuman and I want to be able to do it all, you know? And yet nothing makes me happier than when my friends ask me to do stuff for them and they give me that gift, right? And I have to remember that when I'm asking friends to do stuff for me, I'm giving them that gift. The gift is in the asking and in the receiving, right? Yeah, non-judgmental of ourselves too. Great point, Sarah. That is also a work in progress for me too. Yes, exactly. Non-judgmental of ourselves. Yeah. And just really kind and loving, that loving, love-based response, right? Like if I did what I did and I made a mistake or something like that, I did it with the best of my knowledge. And how do I learn from it and be gentle with myself? moving forward, right? Generosity, so extending the most generous assumptions or interpretations behind people's words and actions. So our relationship is not only trusting if you can assume, is only trusting if you can assume the most generous thing about my words and intentions and behaviors, and then check in with me. And if I make a mistake, you'll make assumptions about it. And then if you make any assumptions about it, you'll check in with me and see what happened. So the great thing about this framework is that it can work for self-trust as well, and checking in with myself to respect my own boundaries with myself, and etc. So when I'm building trust with myself, am I setting boundaries and respecting my own boundaries? Am I holding my own boundaries? Am I being reliable when I say I'm going to do something? Am I sticking to it, right? And holding myself. If I said I was going to read a book today, am I being reliable and then I made that commitment? Am I being accountable? Am I owning my mistakes? If I don't do it, oh, I didn't get to read today, I guess I'll make sure I read tomorrow. Vault, only sharing, and I love Brene Brown says, Dr. Brene Brown says, only share your story with people who've earned the right to hear it. And so am I honoring that vault or that commitment? I think that's a great saying, that you don't just share your story with everyone. It's precious, and you hold it with people who kind of earned the right and built trust over time. Am I standing in my integrity? Am I being non-judgmental towards myself? And am I being generous towards myself? Which means also, one of my favorite examples of generosity that also Dr. Brene Brown talks about is empathy. So being generous with empathy for myself. If I can't have empathy and be loving, have a loving approach to empathy for myself and my emotions and what's going on for me, there is no hope that I can hold that for other people, right? If other people are struggling and I'm to myself, I'm like, suck it up, buttercup, then I will be suck it up, buttercup to other people. And that's not, that's not very generous or kind, right? So, another really great quote from Dr. Brene Brown, she said, if you are not working on your trauma, you're taking your trauma out on other people. So I am aware of that. I'm actively aware of this. I'm like, am I working my trauma out on other people right now? What's going on, right? Is the response that I'm giving to this worthy of this sort of size of reaction, right? And I've absolutely been guilty when it comes to my kids of it being like ginormous. It was totally like, it was a trauma response. So let's shift into, what does this look like for allyship, right? How does this work for allyship? So we kind of have a good understanding of what boundaries are now. Boundaries are a basic human right. UNDRIP defines boundaries way better than I ever could. So Indigenous peoples have the right to the full enjoyment as a collective or as individuals to all human rights and fundamental freedoms. Indigenous peoples are free and equal to all other peoples and have the right to be free from any kind of discrimination in the exercise of their rights, in particular, that are based on their Indigenous origin or identity. Indigenous individuals have the rights to life, physical and mental integrity, liberty, and security of person. So we can clearly define boundaries as mental, physical, emotional, cultural, spiritual. And it can be as basic as treating everyone the way you want to be treated. However, I might not always know or understand how someone wants to be treated. I might need to have some humility and ask how people want to be treated and be open to an honest answer. So a super simple example is introductions. I might ask someone how they want to be introduced, if they want to introduce themselves. What does that look like? What are your boundaries around what you want to talk about and what you don't want to talk about when you're introducing yourself to people? And as well, regarding boundaries, I need to understand that I don't get to start the relationship with a blank slate. We have a responsibility in this digital age to educate ourselves on the history that leads us to this point in time. So most people in my generation, way back in my day, learned more about European explorers in schools than treaties or First Nations peoples on the land. And so I need to know how boundaries have been crossed historically, and are continuing to be crossed in our modern climate. Similar to environmental concerns, I don't just get to ignore the pollution that's happened so far because I haven't specifically been responsible for every piece of that pollution. We have an enormous environmental mess on our hands, and each of us has a responsibility to leave the earth better than we found it for our children and 7 generations forward. So I feel I have a responsibility to approach improving the relationships that were betrayed very gently with 100% love and 0 expectation. So part of understanding boundaries that exist today is sitting in the heartbreaking discomfort of boundaries that have been disrespected. And usually I ground myself in compassion around that. So I ask myself very painful questions about the historical horrors that shape and challenge and motivate me to do better. So I'm going to get a little content warning. Get ready for some hard questions. These are ones that I ask myself. So I'm not asking you to ask yourself this, but I ask myself, how would I feel if someone took my 5-year-old child away from me to live kilometers away from where I am for 10 months of the year? You know, how would I feel if my child was routinely mistreated by adults that were trusted with their care? How would I feel if I were forcibly relocated? If someone showed up at my door right now and said, actually, Robyn Ward, you're going to need to move to, 50 kilometers to the left or whatever, like, and you're just going to have to go there. And this has been my home. I understand this to be my home, but no, you have to leave. How would I feel if it was illegal for me to practice my culture or traditional ceremonies? And these things are, by the way, not only have happened historically. I just heard of a recent story in the news where a couple was not able to name their child in their traditional language, right? So that is, to me, a practice of a human right. You should be able to name your child however you want to name your child, whether or not it can be computed into a Canadian system, right? How would I feel if someone denied me the right to vote on a decision, or denied me the right to have informed consent, right? We've seen a lot of this within the Wet'suwet'en lands, right? Of the building that's going through the pipelines and that not being respected throughout the last few years. How would I feel if it was illegal for me to leave my community? That's not so long ago, right? And I actually know of some elders that still might not leave their community because they do not feel it safe. And I heard also recently a woman, an Indigenous woman, say, how are we supposed to feel safe in a country that, again, content warning, how am I supposed to feel safe in a country when all someone has to do is kill me and throw me into a landfill and no one will ever look for me or try and figure out whatever happened to me? That I get treated like trash and nothing happens as a result of that. How am I supposed to feel safe in a country that does that? And I was like, yeah, right? How would I feel if I couldn't access clean drinking water in my community? How would I feel if I was at a hospital and I was trying to get medical attention for concern and it was being ignored? There was a woman recently who birthed her own stillborn baby in the emergency room in Canada because she was denied care. So these things are actively happening. Like the work of decolonizing needs to be done every day. The unlearning of colonial systems needs to be done every single day. These are very, very recent examples of human rights violations, right? Not to mention all of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls that haven't been found, people profiting from appropriating culture. I have a couple of examples here of recent news stories on APTN News. A First Nations lawyer says a new bill legislation unfairly targets Indigenous women. The Pope repudiates the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery provided a framework for Christian explorers to name, in the name of their sovereign, to lay claim to territories uninhabited by other Christians. If the lands were vacant, they could be defined as discovered and sovereignty claimed. So that's, and this is in the last week, a BC court rejects a challenge to a huge Squamish Nation housing project in Vancouver. A massive Vancouver housing development spearheaded by the Squamish Nation was cleared a huge legal hurdle after a BC Supreme Court judge rejected a challenge by a residents' association over lack of consultation. And racism partly to blame for unequal healthcare provided to Indigenous women. These are recent stories. These are within the last week. So if you're ever uncertain about boundaries and what's going on, it's our responsibility to educate ourselves, to take Indigenous cultural safety courses, the Indigenous Canada course, read Indigenous authors, listen to Indigenous news, CBC or APTN, Indigenous podcasts, go to local Indigenous events and just listen. You know, you have to know boundaries and able to be able to respect them, right? So the first step in allyship is a personal commitment to learning more about the boundaries of local First Nations. And I used to sit comfortably in ignorance and claim Indigenous issues weren't taught at my school, you know, or wait for someone to educate me or invite me into their circle to learn more. Um, but every adult living on this land is responsible to know and understand basic human rights and respect those boundaries. And I take this active commitment as an ally really seriously to be a lifelong learner. So I'm constantly looking for opportunities to learn. What are the boundaries? What's going on in our world? What is going to make our children cry when we're older? What's the, you know, what's the residential schools of today? You know, what's going on? Because there are things that are happening. And I'm going to provide some resources in the end for you to be able to kind of go down those routes in whatever learning ways you want. I think a lot of the times people want like a checklist of like, these are the things that I need to do to be a good ally. And it's such a personal journey. You know, I listen to a lot of podcasts because I like listening to things. And I read a little bit less news. I also find news hard to read sometimes, you know, with stories like that. Like, oh my gosh. Reliable. I just want to check in and make sure everyone's doing okay. Breathing exercises, get a cup of tea if you need one. That was some hard things to talk about in boundaries. Want to respect where you're at. And also another encouragement to take really good care of yourselves. The point of this is not to lay blame or make people feel guilty or shame or break your heart to its core. The point is that we can only do something if we can see it. You know, like in Alcoholics Anonymous, like the first step is admitting it, right? So like the first step is like actually seeing what is going on. And once you see, you can't unsee it. You gotta see it everywhere. Another aspect of building trust is being reliable, being an ally every time with no exception. So that means if someone wants to be an ally, they can't just be an ally at a board meeting and then sit quietly when they hear racist jokes at a party. Allies need to identify as allies all the time and in every situation. Obviously, safety first, you know, but including social media. So this is challenging. I've unfriended several people on social media because of inappropriate attempts to humor and not being able to have conversation around why that's harmful, you know, not being able to show up to the accountability piece. And the examples that we see are just a small sliver of the ingrained prejudice that still exists in our world today. We just see little pieces here and there. And as heartbreaking as these situations are, there are also rich opportunities to educate people. I've had some very meaningful conversations with folks that may not totally understand First Nations, Inuit, Métis history in Canada, and assess the safety first, always. Like there are some situations where I wouldn't even proceed because obviously anything that I say can't be heard. So if someone is in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, they are not able to have an intelligent conversation with their prefrontal cortex, right? So you want to assess, are they in a place to be able to have a conversation? And using that trauma-informed approach is a really great one, right? So I might say to someone, hey, there's something that happened the other day and it kind of landed with me. You know, it hurt my heart a little bit. I'm wondering if you're willing to have a conversation around that. Can you connect with me when you might feel ready to have that conversation? So I'm putting it fully in their court. They are providing permission and consent to proceed forward when they're ready to have that conversation. And then using the same framework, I'm going to be generous. People don't wake up in the morning hoping to be racist. They're not, oh, I'm going to put on my racist sweater today. You know, like, they're not hoping to be hurting other people. I believe in the goodness of humanity, right? So in the same way that I want people to bring into light, if I'm hurting someone, I want to know, right? Yeah. I just looked at the time. I'm like, no, panic, 9 minutes. Okay, accountability. We'll try and speed through this. Accountability is owning up to mistakes, right? So we're human. We can't get it right 100% of the time, and holding yourself accountable. So one embarrassing mistake that I made 20 years ago was I was at my first powwow with my partner, and I called regalia a costume, which is terrible. And I didn't understand the profound difference between putting on something to pretend you are something you are not, which is a costume, and wearing traditional outfits and regalia that connect Indigenous people to a cultural heritage and spiritual practice. So I apologized immediately, have not made that mistake again. And I share that mistake because I've heard other people make it too. And again, in that same way that I assume the best of humanity, I don't think they're meaning to be harmful. It's just something maybe they haven't seen or experienced, right? So the important thing is to remember as allies is we need to acknowledge the mistakes and then learn from it. I love Maya Angelou's saying, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. And I hope to be doing that constantly throughout time. I love Gabor Mate says sometimes, I've heard him say it a few times where he's like, thank God, he's 73 years old. He's like, thank God I am not as young, foolish, and stupid as I was at 73 or 72. Sorry, I botched the joke. But yeah, so it's like 1 year earlier, right? Like just last year. Thank God I'm not as stupid, foolish, and young as I was last year. Um, and a strong ally will use their white settler privilege as an amplifier to create safer spaces for Indigenous friends and partners. So for example, I take it upon myself to call it racist jokes. I take it upon myself to cultivate safe spaces. I don't expect the responsibility to solely fall on Indigenous peoples. I think we all share that responsibility. Another example of a mistake was I was in a cultural safety training and we were talking about stereotypes and we we're talking about Indigenous stereotypes. And I put up my hand and I was like, why are we not talking about white stereotypes? Because those exist as well. And the facilitator very kindly said, because this isn't a white-centered training. And I was like, head down. Like, I'm still like licking my wounds from that one. Like I was like, oh, whoa, white fragility moment there. I admit that I was not, I was not approaching it in the way that I should. And so I learned a lot in that moment. And I'm grateful for it, you know. So accountability is being willing to answer challenging questions about what brings you into the role as well, and identifying as an ally. So your motivations need to be transparent. Far too often in Canadian history, people show up to Indigenous spaces claiming the best of intentions, and as a result, there was massive widespread cultural genocide. So residential schools, Indian hospitals, starlight tours, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the 60 scoop, the list goes on. And this historical shame, this reality, is something that every Canadian faces. So I ask myself, how do I show up and be accountable to that history? And what am I doing to rebuild relationships that have decayed over time? Vault is holding trust, right? Thinking about trust as like a trust bank. So you're putting deposits into the trust bank all of the time. And any breaking trust is withdrawals from the trust bank. So you never want to be on a deficit of your trust bank, right? So your deposits are developing strong relationships based on trust. Withdrawals occur when you violate trust. So betrayal includes ignoring opportunities to build trust. In Canada's historical relationship with Indigenous peoples have brought the nation to nation trust bank to an all-time low with a deficit incurred from centuries of exploitation and racism, right? So modern settlers are not directly responsible for that entire history, but the goal as an ally is to focus on your personal trust bank, right? How do I work on my personal trust bank and prevent your balance from ever dropping? Trust in action is rooted in respecting boundaries. It's built slowly over time, small acts of kindness. White people do not have the right to Indigenous knowledge. And if someone shares Indigenous stories, customs, traditions with allies, that information or experience is a gift, but it doesn't give you the permission to share or replicate that gift, especially for profit or mass production, right? It doesn't become yours because someone shared it with you. So respecting the cultural customs and traditions, knowledge has always, and that knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, has always and always will be belonging to Indigenous peoples. So as an ally, it's important to respect. If someone doesn't also want to welcome me into their circle, that's okay. They're under no obligation to invite me to their community, share their cultural wisdom with me or their stories or anything like that. So if someone invites me into that space, I always treat it with the highest honor and gratitude and humility. So we build trust daily through every action and reaction, and we don't, gain trust by going withdrawals or betraying that trust, right? Integrity, we talked a little bit about this, but choosing courage over comfort, prioritizing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy, practicing, not just professing our values. Integrity permeates your thoughts, words, and actions. It doesn't happen instantly, but operating out of integrity every day is a crucial part of being an accomplice, and understanding that you can lose your integrity in a second. Doing the wrong thing and not standing in your integrity can ruin entire relationships, right? So that integrity piece is really important. I need another hour for this slide, but non-judgment. So this is kind of knowing and understanding everyone has their own stories. There's so much intersection with privilege and experience, body size, mental health, neurodiversity, skin color, sexuality, gender, formal education, institution, career stage, funding resources, caring duties, housing, current wealth, language, citizenship, religion, culture, childhood, house stability. There are so many intersections to people's stories. And I've been with my partner now for over 20 years, and he can still tell me things that I've never known about him. So we can never know someone's story fully. And so making generous assumptions on what we don't know, right? If someone doesn't call me, if someone's late for a meeting, I'm going to be generous about the assumptions that, there's something going on, and Indigenous cultures are different. They're not inferior. So they vary across all of North America. There are different protocols, traditions, all of those kinds of things. And I am still very much learning. 20 years as being part of an Indigenous family, and I am still learning what it means to be an Anishinaabe person. Not that I'm an Anishinaabe person, but like learning what it means for my boys, and non-judgment grows from compassion, understanding, empathy. It's not our place to judge, make suggestions, observations, go in and fix things, or put, try to help in the way that we feel will be helpful. The role of an ally is a supporting role, not a leading one, right? So non-judgment means that even if you don't agree with something, respect that opinion and perspective and try to approach with understanding and respectful curiosity. And a great example here is how mainstream population might view homelessness of individuals, right? The common judgment is that homelessness is a result of poor life decisions. However, statistics reveal that homelessness has more commonly a result of childhood trauma and mental health struggles. It has nothing to do with choice, right? It's circumstance. Generosity, balance, equality, being generous with your assumptions about people, including yourself. The social structure in Western society has been imbalanced for far too long. So part of reconciliation is trying to find that balance with the current injustice within the systems that exist. True allies see the reconciliation conversation as an opportunity to educate and encourage humanity to do better. They see an opportunity with strong and unwavering dedication to use the framework of restitution to make the world a better place for everyone. And to learn from the past, we start by listening, right? Reading, hearing with open hearts, then using that wisdom gained as a compass to direct the decisions that we make. Education is one of the most important keys to a generous worldview, because generosity leads to understanding. I'm going to talk a little bit about language. I've used the word ally a lot. I'm most comfortable with the word ally, although I know a lot of people use accomplice or co-conspirator, which are also really great words. Co-resistor is being a co-resistor is about standing together in an assembly and resisting against oppressive forces, and requires constant learning. I think the language is important. I think the action behind the language is even more important. Oh my God, it's 3 o'clock. Okay. I wanted to end with 2 really great quotes. So I'll just keep you a little bit longer if I can. So every relationship is connected to your healing. I love that quote. Every relationship is connected to your healing, that we're working together. And then we are story. This is Richard Wagamese, who wrote Indian Horse. We are story, all of us. What comes to matter then is the creation of the best possible story we can have while we're here. You and me, us together. When we can do that and we can take the time to share those stories with each other, we get bigger inside. We see each other, we recognize our kinship, and we change the world one story at a time. I just love it. So thank you, Miigwech. Sorry for keeping you a minute over. I'm just going to copy and paste some resources for you in the chat, and I'm happy to stick around if anyone wants to ask any questions. But thank you so much for coming today. I hope you are walking away with at least a few new tools and skills to lead you in this work. Oh. And I will stop the share. Yeah, thank you so much. Apparently my message is too long and I have to send it in 2. I will do that. So these are just some resources that I found really helpful and things that I talked about. Please feel free to come off the mic and ask questions if you feel like it. It was a lot. It was a lot of information.
It was great. Thank you so much, Robyn.
Thank you for being here. So good to see everyone.
Yes, thank you, Robyn. I'm assuming that you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be available to watch? I had to step away for a few minutes in the middle, and I would love to be able to share this with my colleagues too, because we talk a lot about trauma-informed practices, and there were a lot of pieces in there that was new to me, and so I'm sure that there are knowledge gaps amongst other people too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if it's allowed, next time charge us. It was really valuable. Anyways, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. I saw your name pop up. I'm like, Michelle, you're there. And everyone I recognized your names. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. So yeah, just love to everyone, like just love vibes. Yeah, Can-Do records this. And so I think within the next few weeks or so, usually it will go up on the website, and I'll post it on LinkedIn and Instagram once the recording goes up. So,
Lovely.
and yeah, please, as things are kind of like, as you're marinating all of these ideas, like please feel free to connect with me, book time with me anytime, email me, call me, anything like that. I love talking about this kind of stuff because this is like the meaning behind what are we doing? You know, how are we making the world a better place? How are we making it different? I love it.
Preach.
You're amazing. You did a fantastic job. I loved how you took the whole Brené braving and incorporated into how we show up as allies. That was a wonderful and fabulously creative and impactful way of framing this whole conversation and how we show up. Yay, you.
Yeah, I agree completely. I loved that.
Thank you. Well, what I love is I didn't really get to talk about this, but this works in all relationships, not just relationships with ourselves, but like that 2S LGBTQIA plus, you know, any BIPOC member community, like this framework works for building trust in any space, which I really like lean on a lot, right? I'm a fan of frameworks and tricks and tools. I also really love cultivating safe spaces, which I put a link to there as well. Of course, all of this work is guided by my knowledge in that too. So, but it's hard to talk about all the things all at once. I'm sure you could tell. I could go on for like 8 hours talking about it. And each little piece individually, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you all take super good care of yourselves for the rest of the day. Nudge to, you know, spoil yourselves a little for all the extra learning you did today and all the extra showing up that you did, whatever that means for you, being near water, going for a walk, tea, reading your favorite book that you're looking forward to, you know, just anything that speaks to your heart to really say hello. Oh, I love seeing kids in the background. Hello. And I love you so much. I love you, Sarah and Jessica and Shell, Catherine, Michelle. Oh my gosh, so good to see you. I have a set of earrings for you that I need to send in the mail, Michelle, by the way. They're like little books. They're so cute.
You're always so thoughtful.
So
for the record, Robyn and I, we used to be roommates way back when my son was born, and Robyn is in fact cousins with my husband. So there's a long history.
there is. And we just got to see each other this summer, which was really awesome. And yeah. And Alicia, I went to school with, Alicia Brown, who's in here. Shell and I also went to school together. We did executive coaching course together. And Jessica is a longtime friend. Her partner and my partner are like brothers. They're just, they met each other and they were wearing the same shirt. That's how like, similar they are. Like,
and everyone was like, you gotta meet Jacob, you gotta meet Jeff, you gotta meet Jacob. And yeah, they finally met, and then I got to meet Robyn. Bonus. very big bonus for me. Yeah, thank you so much, Robyn. Really good. I'm glad I took the time out today to join and get all these wonderful reminders. I need, reminders every day, and so I really appreciate you doing all your work, your lifetime career of work, and sharing it with us. So I'm really, really full of gratitude towards you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, air hugs, air hugs. Thank you. Love to you all. I'm gonna sign off now, but again, connect with me anytime. Really seriously, anytime. Yeah. Take care. Bye.